We were slaves in Egypt, we were slaves, but now we all are free, we all are free. While in Egypt we were slaves, but now we all are free. While in Egypt we were slaves, but now we all are free, we all are free. Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin, Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin, Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin, ata b'nechorin, Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin, Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin, Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin. We were slaves in Egypt, we were slaves, but now we all are free, we all are free. While in Egypt we were slaves, but now we all are free. While in Egypt we were slaves, but now we all are free, we all are free. Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin, Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin, Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin, ata b'nechorin, Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin, Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin, Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin. We were slaves in Egypt, we were slaves, but now we all are free, we all are free. While in Egypt we were slaves, but now we all are free. While in Egypt we were slaves, but now we all are free, we all are free. Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin, Avadim hayinu, ata b'nechorin, Avadim hayinu, ata.
Psst, Moses. The Almighty calls Moses over for a talk. This is right after the death of the junior high priests, Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu. Achrei mot, literally after the death, is the Torah portion that deals with the aftermath of this tragedy, exploring ways of reacting to death. It is generally assumed that the two Levites were victims of passion, that they got carried away in their duties of devotion. In response, God demands discipline. As soon as the mourning is over, Moses receives a detailed operations manual for the safe maintenance of the tabernacle, the first Hebrew religious operations center. Achrei mot describes this operation manual, listing the regulations that will enable safe access to the sacred. Nobody wants another fatal fire. There are 3 sections of the operations manual discussed in these chapters. Number 1, meat, is all about how, where, and when to eat it. Number 2, sex, the complete guide to who not to have it with. Number 3, atonement, the perfect path for cleaning up your act after the inevitable oops moments caused by meat, sex, and all other human desires. While basic human desires may not have changed much since biblical days, how modern individuals and societies deal with these desires has changed quite a bit. Can this ancient manual be remotely relevant to what we eat, how we love, and if we pray today? Probably, but only if we dig deeper, finding symbolic meanings and metaphors that interpret and translate it into modern tools for our needs. Searching beyond the literal meaning is one more way of making Torah matter today. So here it goes. Section 1. How to eat meat. No eating of fresh blood? Okay. No eating of corpses? Gross, of course. All slaughtering of animals must only happen at the tabernacle, administered by Levites, who then get a share of the meat. Is this the original income tax system? And also, the reminder to keep the meat industry closely regulated, supervised, and truly answering to a higher authority is appreciated. Next, Section 2. Regulations regarding atonement. This is the origin of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Then and now, this Day of Judgment is a 24-hour marathon, including special clothing, diet, and general reflection on what needs fixing in our lives. The rituals of the day, Leviticus style, involved a lot of blood and sacrificial animals, each representing another part of the past, individual desires, collective crimes. We have evolved in sacrificial days, and very few of the tabernacle rituals are still conducted on Yom Kippur, but the essence remains. This is a day rich with rituals that enable us to take responsibility for our past, to reflect on our present, and reimagine our future, new and improved. This one's still a classic. Then there's Section 3, all about sex, or rather, who not to have sex with. It is a pretty long list that includes no-brainers like no sleeping with your sister, but also more challenging ones like no sex between men. Like Sections 1 and 2 of this manual, Section 3 is interested in discipline and order, setting rules and regulations for what a life lived well should look like. But also, just like the first two sections, some of the rules here are not as obvious anymore, and could have several significantly different modern interpretations. Regardless of how different people interpret this operations manual, the bottom line here is that discipline matters. Whether it's about eating meat, fasting on Yom Kippur, or making love, safety, intention, and careful attention to detail can transform a simple human action into a sacred act. Achrei Mot is not just an ancient reaction to a brutal death. It is, more importantly, a timeless affirmation of a messy, complicated, holy human life. Sacred act. Achrei Mot is not just an ancient reaction to a brutal death. It is, more importantly, a timeless affirmation of a messy, complicated, holy human life.
So good evening, everyone. Wanted to share that with you. It's a great video. Well done. I like the Godcast videos. They have a lot of good stuff on their site. So tonight I want to talk about our instructional manual. We saw the delivery arrive with Moses. This is the Yom Kippur part. Cool. The part about atonement. And like the video says, this manual we have, Achrei Mot, is divided into three sections. We have the section on eating meat. We have the section on atonement. And the third section is on sexual relations, who to have them with and who not. And all these over time have been interpreted. For instance, under the meat listing, chicken is not meat, but chicken has been put into the meat category because the early rabbis said we eat chicken like we eat meat. And so therefore they put the boundary out from the original listing of mammals and moved those rabbinic fences out to include poultry under the category of meat. Your ultra-Orthodox and your Orthodox will still consider chicken to be meat, and so they follow the rules. At the Zimmerman house, we keep biblical kosher, so at our house and in many Sephardim households, chicken is backed to its regular category of fowl. It is not meat. It does not have live animal birth. It does not give milk. Regardless of what we want to say, eggnog is not chicken milk. Aha. Anyway, and so we have these rules about eating meat. Then we have our second category, which is all about atonement. And as we saw in our video, many of these still, right, Troy, would fish be meat too? But fish is parve, and fish is still considered parve today. And even though we eat it like meat, it looks very different from meat. If we take ground chicken and make a hamburger out of ground chicken, it's going to look a lot like a burger once we cook it, and it's going to look a lot like a hamburger. Sure it is. Eggnog is chicken milk. Only served during the holidays, of course. Look for that. Look for that in your supermarket come Hanukkah and the Christian holidays of Christmas. But we eat meat and fowl the same way. We roast them, and once you cut them up, if somebody's walking past, would they know if you're eating meat or fowl? Because the rabbis couldn't be sure, they don't want to put out bad stuff. They don't want somebody to walk by a Jew's house and go, you, a Jew, you're eating meat with dairy. Doesn't your God tell you not to eat meat and dairy together? How are you going to explain chicken? Some folks are just not going to get it. In fact, there is an old joke that says the Jewish guy walked past Burger King and there's his friend inside and he's eating a cheeseburger at the table and he stares at his friend for a while and doesn't really know how to go in and approach his friend. So he does the Jewish thing and he goes to the rabbi and the rabbi comes along and he too stares through the window and watches the man eat the cheeseburger. And he waits. And when the man comes out, he says, "Why did you eat a kosher cheeseburger? Why did you eat a cheeseburger?" And the man looked him in the eye and goes, "I ate it under rabbinical supervision." Ha ha. But that's not the point either. Like our video said, these are about boundaries and about safe access to the sacred. As we saw with Nadav and Avihu, they did not access God safely, and so they got serious consequences. If we also don't have boundaries around our behaviors and we don't access the sacred in appropriate ways, we too could receive we too would receive consequences. What they would be, there's no way to tell. We saw what Nadav and Avihu got. I would like to think we wouldn't get the same thing. And so that's where boundaries came in and poultry became listed as meat, even though it is technically not meat, it is fowl. And so, we call fowl at the rabbis because they turned our fowl into meat. Now, on to atonement. When we think about atonement, we think about Yom Kippur, we think about the rituals that we say, the prayers that we say, but there are numerous opportunities for atonement throughout the year. Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi says that every Friday night, every Thursday night is actually a Yom Kippur Katan, a tiny little Yom Kippur in which we can make amends that have occurred over the past week so that when we come into Shabbat on Friday night, we can come in with a clean and joyous heart and not bring our personal baggage along with us so that we are free to enjoy Shabbos. And so we have boundaries for atonement, rules that say, this is not appropriate behavior. Just like we teach our children, don't hit the kid next door, God tells us the rules of appropriate behavior. Don't climb, we learn, don't climb, no, actually, we learn that in Deuteronomy about when you build a new house and you put a fence around, don't forget to put the fence around your roof. It's about family safety and neighborhood safety. And if you have a pit and you don't fence it off, then you are liable for damages if somebody's animal falls in. So a lot of these are just as relevant for us today as they were in the past with interpretation. We might not build a house that has a fence around the roof because most of our houses here in the modern world, in our culture anyway, do not have flat roofs. We're not up there hanging out and socializing with our friends, so we don't have to worry about people falling off the roof. But we have backyards, we have swimming pools, we put fences around our swimming pools to keep them safe from neighborhood children and pets. We, keep your bull in the pen. That's right. Of course, my cousin's bull was in the pen. And his new bride was taking a shower out there because they didn't have indoor plumbing, so the shower was in the barn. And she had a head full of soap suds, turned over and saw the bull looking at her over the fence, and went screaming, covered in soap suds and towels, to the front yard, while the rest of us kids, because we were all little, laughed our little tushes off. So we want rules, and our atonement follows specific rules. We have specific sacrifices that God lists for us to bring for atonement. We have specific prayers that we say that have atonement. We have a process that we follow for atonement. If we've made an error with somebody, we go to that person and say, I'm sorry. If the person does not accept our apology, we go back 2 more times for a total of 3 times. And if at that point the person chooses to still not accept our apology, then our soul is clean because we have made the attempt 3 times, and now the schmutz, I think that's the word I'm looking for, schmutz, and it belongs on the person to whom we attempted to apologize. Then we have rules about sex. And we got these basic rules that don't have sexual relations between mothers and sons, fathers and daughters, brothers and sisters, aunts and nephews, uncles and nieces, and so on. And then we come to what today can be interpreted as a very troubling piece of legislation. We have rules and discipline about same-sex relationships. And you'll notice that in the Torah portion, when we are looking at these relationships, let me get you the right verse here. Okay, let's see, we're looking at starting with verse 1 in chapter 18, I believe. It looks like chapter 18, because it's Yavikra. Leviticus 18, and it starts with chapter 1. Shemitah. Shemitah is the process of butchering meat. Shemitah. No, I don't think that's correct. Let's look up Shemitah. Yavikra, like the Shemitah year is the sabbatical year. Shmutz, I think, is the one I'm looking for. Yeah, Schmutz. 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 Let's see. I didn't hit that. Okay, so it is. The word we're looking for is Schmutz. Shemitah is the sabbatical year. What's the one at the end of Elul about the credits? I will have to check into that one. I'm not sure off the top of my head about that. But it's probably part of the ritual, the credit before the Shabbat year. Well, I know that when we talk about the sabbatical year, that all loans are forgiven in the sabbatical year. Is that what you're referring to, Troy? Because today, the credit that we would have, over time, it became popular for people not to give loans to poor people when it came close to the Shemitah year, because of the fact that they knew that they would have to forgive the loan and would not get it paid back. So they came up with a rabbinical fiction where the people owning the debt, the debt holders, would sell the debt to the banks for the Shemitah year. And then afterwards, the debt holders would buy the debt back. So technically, they didn't have any debt to, to write off during the Shemitah year. So I think that might be what you're talking about. Okay. So hopefully that's an answer that helps with that. But where was I? Atonement rituals. We see, if we look at the no, we weren't on that. We were on sexual rules. Okay, they're in Leviticus 18, beginning with verse 1. And God speaks to Moses, of course, and starts listing out this list. Now, if you read this list carefully, then you will notice it says that a man should not lie with a man as he does with a woman. It doesn't say anything about women lying with women, and it's only got that one prohibition against men lying with men. So that opens the door for interpretation as to there's other ways that you can lie with men if you have a choice that you might want to do so. And there's obviously open choice for women because that's not listed at all. But again, when we look at the categories in this manual that we're given in Acharei Mot, which is after the death, and how we're supposed to handle life, and what our boundaries and our rules are in matters of eating meat, and matters of atonement, and matters of sexual relationships, it's about discipline, and it's about commitment. Because discipline says we have boundaries, we respect the boundaries, and we're not going to change the boundaries. Commitment is something that we have in both relationships with each other. I know that there are homosexual and lesbian couples that are now able to get married after living together for like 30, 40 years, 25 years, long periods of time, which says that the relationship is a committed marriage-like relationship. But the actual legal marriage will provide them with benefits that they can't have under civil law any other way. And so this can be reinterpreted because God likes committed relationships. What God is against, that we see repeated over and over and over again, are pagan rituals, pagan relationships, pagan stuff like sacred prostitution, which was a common way of worship in many pagan cultures. Blood. We're not vampires. We don't suck the blood out of our meat. Pagans would use that as a ritual, and some cultures still do it, like Native American cultures who, when they go on a hunt, first thing they do is cut out the heart and eat the heart raw with the blood still on it, because they feel that that helps them absorb the strength and the essence of the animal. And that was a pagan ritual. We hear a lot about, I think it was the Aztec Indians, cutting the heart out of their sacrifices, human sacrifices, because that was the heart, the strength, the blood, place of being. And we don't do that. We don't. Well, we eat fish raw, and some of us eat steak tartare that like steak tartare, and that's raw meat. But overall, we tend to like our meat cooked. We tend to like our chicken cooked. Most of us like our fish cooked, unless you're into sushi. I'm not into sushi. I like my fish cooked. But they help us do that, and because we have rules about how our meat is prepared, how our meat is butchered, what the process is, the correct way to butcher it to reduce pain, then we can be sure of what we're getting. Let's see what kind of questions we have. I'm kind of wandering through this parsha here with these rules. So let's see what you have to say. What about you, Rebecca? And what about you, Troy? How about, and we have some guests, and you, Doc. What kind of guests, if you want to join, just type in a name, like a word, hi, hit enter, and you'll come up with a login space. And at that point, you can just you pick a username and a password and sign in and contribute to our conversation and discussion. I don't know that sushi is against Noahide law and animal limbs, because we're talking sushi, which is a fish product, and fish is part. It is not animal, nor do fish have limbs. I believe sushi is kosher. Let me run a quick search and see what I can find out about that. Sushi is kosher, but it has to have, there's an article put out by the Chicago Rabbinical Council. It's called Kosher Sushi, which is not your Bubby's gefilte fish. I'm going to share a link with you for anybody who would like to go to and read this particular article. That's not it. Let's try this again. That was the article for the video we just watched. You don't want to click on that link. So let's see if we get a new one. Here we go. This is the article about kosher, and it comes from the Rabbinical Council in Chicago. And it says what you do not want is the seaweed that has shrimp in it. have to buy it from a kosher establishment. It contains wasabi, soy sauce, pickled ginger, sesame seeds, rice vinegar, seaweed, rice, and fish. Other common ingredients are avocados, carrots, cucumbers, green onions, mayonnaise, and chili sauce. So you can read this article, and it talks about the really issues, the kosher issues are with the nori sheets. One is the possible existence of insects and contamination of flavors. Okay, let me see if I can type it in. HTTP. Okay, we all know this part. And then we got I'm putting it up in pieces for you, / kosher article / kosher sushi.php. Okay. Did that come up for you, Rebecca? Wait a minute. I missed one. After the www. Okay. Okay. Well, go ahead and read that. You'll find it has a lot of great information about the kosher sushi and why you should buy it from a reputable kosher supermarket. I have not looked for it at my local kosher supermarket because I don't eat sushi. I'm not a sushi person. So see how you can work with that. So I hope that answers your question, Troy. We can trust the Chicago Rabbinical Council. They're not going to steer us wrong in ways of food. Oh, okay. Okay. That's a good idea. Okay, got it. Thank you for your help, Rebecca. I appreciate that. I'm not exactly the biggest techie in the world, though I learned today how to get a coupon on my smartphone, so I'm moving up in the world. But anyway, what about our Parsha? What jumps out at you? What do you think? There are three really big key concepts the Chicago Rabbinical Council did, Troy. Cool. And right now we're kosher for Passover, so that's a good thing because they can help you do that today. Did you just kosher it to kosher it, or did you kosher it for Passover, which is a whole nother world altogether? There are a lot more rules than you would think. So one notable mitzvot, one key concept we have in this parsha is the idea of scapegoats, and they belong under the section of our manual called atonement because this is about Azazel, the goat, and how the two goats are brought to Aaron, and Aaron is to mark. One of the goats is being for God, one of the goats is for Azazel. That's the scapegoat for the mistakes that we have and our errors from throughout the years. When the goat for Azazel is brought to Aaron, Aaron places both his hands on it and confesses all the wrongdoing. Great. I'm glad that they found them helpful, Troy. So read their article. You'll enjoy that as well. They have a lot of good stuff to offer. And you can be sure that you're getting the truth from there. You are going to get an Orthodox perspective because they are the Rabbinical Council. Okay, good. Do you know that for sure, Rebecca? I haven't heard that. I know that hotels that are koshering their hotels sell their hotels to non-Jews in Israel, and then they buy them back after Passover, so they don't have to do all this koshering. People who have pets on paper sell their pets to their neighbors, and then they don't have to worry about wheat products in their pets because they're technically babysitting the neighbor's dog for the week that they sold the dog. I know that I fill out a form every year for my rabbi that we are selling our chametz, all our leavening products, to our rabbi's non-Jewish neighbor. And for this privilege, we pay them to take it off our hands. We make a donation to the Yavikra, the synagogue, in order for the rabbi to do us this big favor. And then I put all my leavening in a cupboard, and we just lock it up. Pack it up in the cupboard in the pantry, lock the door, and just leave it. Of course, I also put all the regular dishes and pots and pans and everything else in there. And it takes, look, okay, you're looking at verses 18, 26 to 27. Let's see. 26, but you must keep my laws and my rules, and you must not do any of those abhorrent things, neither the citizen nor the stranger that resides among you. For all those abhorrent things were done by the people who were in the land before you, which are the pagans, the Canaanites, and the land became defiled. Now, once the second temple was gone, we no longer had biblical Judaism because the text became set, it became canonized, and we moved into a new period of Jewish history known as the Rabbinical period. So, Rabbinical Judaism is not biblical Judaism. At that time, this rule applied to the land. This rule does not apply in modern Israel today. And so your restaurants, your big hotels, somebody who serves everybody would be selling off their properties to non-Jewish owners and then buying them back after Passover. I am sure that in each one of those hotels, they have a separate Passover kitchen that they would be using for Passover for Jews who would come in and say, I need a Passover meal. Or maybe the Jews are not eating, maybe they're not eating out during Passover. Our kids, our kids always thought we should take a Passover cruise. They said I, as the rabbi, could lead the Seder, and we wouldn't have to kosher the house. And they wouldn't have to clean their rooms. Needless to say, that did not work. So we're also talking about topics and teachings that are reflecting changes in family life. Because family life used to be matrilineal, and that was the social order. The women ran the families, and women had a lot of power. And over time, society became patrilineal, and the matrilineal social order was observed by the matriarchs. And we see evidence of that in how Sarah was arranging for children, how Rebecca was finagling with her twins, how Rachel took the father's household gods because matrilineal society was the norm at that time period, and Judaism slowly became more patrilineal. But the matrilineal idea remained because Judaism is passed down through the mother. It's not passed down through the dad. So there has been some matrilineal stuff that has remained in our culture and our religion. So do we have any comments on Azazel the goat? The goat that is for Azazel under the atonement section. And Aaron lays his hands on the goat's head. And that word is called smicha. It means laying on of hands. And when a rabbi or cantor is ordained today, that process is known as smicha. And it comes from the same idea, the laying on of hands. We do not use two goats in synagogue today. We use prayer, and we confess our sins. Some of them we confess in the singular. Some of them we confess. That's good, Troy. Yeah, she's the boss. Sounds like it to me. Sounds like she knew what she was doing, too, and she had it under control. Okay. I do not have a copy of the text one Enoch. That's one of the scrolls that did not make it into our modern canon. There were a lot of scrolls written in the 1st and 2nd century. Some of them became Christian scrolls. Some of them became Jewish. He might have been. I don't know the history of one Enoch, and I haven't read that one. So there are a lot of scrolls that were floating out, and not all of them ended up in the official canon of the Torah or the Christian scriptures. Okay, yeah, there you go. She ran the house, she ran the farm. So do we have any comments or questions about Azazel? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure it is. There's too many texts that I'd like to have that are not yet in my library that one day I may add. Okay, well, what about questions? We've talked about some questions on kashrut. What about questions on sexual relations? Is that something anybody has a question on or any comments? What do we think? One of the most challenging sections. Why would we want boundaries on it? I mean, do we really have to be told not to sleep with our brother or our sister? If you suggested that to my kids, they'd look at their siblings and go, ew, gross. We have to have it written down. Do we have it written down because this was normal behavior in pagan cultures? And so it was written down as rules that because Jews are holy people, God's people, we're not going to be like pagans and we're not going to do pagan behaviors. I can see your mind churning, Troy. Smoke coming out your ears. See? Could it be relating to religious practices of the Egyptians and the Canaanites, like it states in verse 1 of chapter 18? It's very possible because one of the things that we see in Egypt was the pharaohs marrying their sisters. There was a lot of in marriage between brothers and sisters who then ruled as husband and wife. And the Canaanites would have, I know the Canaanites practiced sacred prostitution. Do not copy these practices. Do not follow their laws. Follow mine and only mine. What do you think of the idea that God is sending these people into a land that he wants them to have that's already occupied by these types of peoples and this kind of behavior? So God's got to lay down the rules. What do you think about the idea that a lot of this material teaches us about discipline, about sometimes self-denial? I don't know, Troy, maybe you have a sister that you want to sleep with and God says no, and so you have to practice self-denial and discipline and say, nope, she's off limits. Or Rebecca, maybe you have a brother that speaks to you and you're just like, oh, baby, and God says, nope, discipline, he's off limits, self-denial. Let's see, Rebecca says, all of these things were to set the Jews and the people who lived when, basically from Abraham onward. Right, sets limits. It's about discipline, limits, boundaries, self-restraint. We have freedom. We're freed from slavery. Now that we have freedom, one of the things about freedom is freedom requires limits. Freedom requires discipline. Freedom requires boundaries and obligations. We can't just run willy-nilly and do whatever we want, whenever we want, with no rules. We live in the real world, and the real world is filled with rules. And now that we are a people, because remember, when this text is written, it's set between Exodus and it's set between the book of Numbers. So we are learning about being a people, and we're laying down rules, and we're learning that, yeah, like Troy says, we have responsibility. Freedom doesn't mean the ability to do whatever we want whenever we want. With freedom comes responsibility, limits, boundaries, self-discipline, comes sometimes self-denial. And it's a really poignant reading to be doing the week before Passover, when Passover is kind of juxtaposed in, because it was Passover that was the culminating event that released us from slavery. And we had that in the last book back, and now here we are getting limits set, our first instructional manual, because we could have used these laws. I'm sure that Aaron would have liked them before his sons went nilly-willy in to do whatever they were going to do and ended up toast. Not to make light of such a serious incident, but, you know. And so it was, quote, no pun intended, seared into the minds of the Israelites that, wow, wait, there are some limits. Freedom does have limits and responsibility. Comments? Questions? Thoughts? Let's see what you have to say. If you're still here, Doc, I hope you're still here. You're still listed as being here. We'll see what else Rebecca and Troy have to say. I know we got a lag time here. Yeah, it would have been helpful to get the rules first. It would have, but sometimes that doesn't happen. I took my father to a pain clinic last Thursday, and I took him back to the nursing home so that they could release him. And then I asked for the prescription for the pain pills, and they said they can't give me a prescription. I have to get it from the pain clinic. Had they told me that before I went to the pain clinic, I could have gotten it done. As it is, that was Thursday. This is Monday night, and we still don't have pain pills for Dad. Yeah, it's hard to not break the rules if you don't know the rules. I think that Nadiv and Avihu were passionate. I think they were excited. They were like little kids. They had a job. They were like, yes! They ran in anxiously, but they didn't know the rules and the boundaries, and it cost them dearly because they didn't get the information in time because they were far more excited. Now, it's 8:54, so we only have a few minutes left, but I want to give you my financial spiel again. See that donate button up at the top of the page? That's our pushka, so put another nickel in that little pushka tin. And a nickel being 5 is equivalent to $5 today. Really, a card game. All the rules don't get spoken. Card game is called Mao, and then you have to figure the rules out as the game gets played. Oh, yay! How did that go? Were there penalties for people who didn't follow the rules? Sounds like the game of life to me. Of course, parents are supposed to prepare their children to move them into the land, just like God prepares us to move us into the land. But as parents, the land we move our children to is called real world life. And we get out there and we make mistakes. We get those, as the video said, oops! And so we have atonement, a way to fix our mistake. I don't think I'd be good at it either, Rebecca. I do not think I would be good at it. You were given another card, and the goal of the game was to get rid of all the cards? That sounds hard to win to me. Particularly challenging. When your number is up, huh? Okay, now, as you may remember, next Monday night is the first night of Passover. And because it is the first night of Pesach, there will be no Torah study next week. Then the following Monday is the 8th night, and there will be a Torah study, but it'll be a special study on Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, because that is the text that we normally study during the week of Passover. We study the love song. And I will send out a note and get it posted on the site so that you remember that there's no study next Monday, and the following one will be on Shir HaShirim, and then in 2 weeks we will pick our study up at Kiddushin. We won't skip any Parsha readings. We'll go ahead and just move to Kiddushin. We'll take a break in between Achrei Mot and Kiddushin for Passover. So are there any further comments or questions? I have a sip of my iced tea. It was hot down here today. It was 91 degrees here this afternoon. Okay. Well, if there's no comments or no other questions, I'm going to let all of you go and have a meaningful Pesach next week. And I'll see you the following week. And the date for that will be, let me see, I have a new phone. I've moved up to the world of smartphones. So let me see. I know I have a calendar app here. Oh, there it is, calendar. So next week is 14th, which is Passover. So it'll be on the 21st that we'll be doing Shirim HaShirim. Shir HaShirim, I'm sorry. 40s and raining there. No, not here. We had gusts of wind. We're supposed to get heavy rain come through this evening, but 91 degrees. Chag Sameach to all of you. Okay, the 21st. Yes, it'll be on the 21st, and that's when we'll do Shir HaShirim. Technically, it's the 8th day of Passover, so it's kind of the last day in the diaspora, but so it'll be a good night to do Shir HaShirim. I will let all of you go. You can go back to koshering your homes for Passover. The first year that we set out crackers and gave the kids flashlights, feathers, and wooden spoons to find them all, the dog ate all the crackers before the kids could find them. After that, we learned that once we started putting out the crackers, the dog had to go to the backyard and couldn't come back in until the cracker hunt was over. The joys of holidays through the years. So, Laila Tov, everyone, and we will see you next week. Excuse me, we'll see you the following week. Good night.